And with that, I am more than thrilled to welcome to the stage our first panel. It's a conversation that I've really been looking forward to. It's a conversation about how Jane App reached a $1.8 billion valuation without taking any outside capital to start, and they did it on their own terms. And so please give a warm welcome to Ali, Trevor, and Andrew.
Good morning. Thanks, Joshua. Thanks to Rainforest and the Vertex team for a wonderful conference, and thank you for all showing up bright and early on a Tuesday morning. So before we head off, I want to give you a little bit of context. My name's Andrew Masawi. That helps you realize that this is Alison and Trevor. I wanted to give a bit of context about where I'm coming from in this conversation. I've been fortunate to have known Ali and Trevor for about 10 years. And I've had the privilege of serving on the board of Jane as an independent for about 7 years now. All that to say, I've had the privilege of having a front row seat to one of the more remarkable growth stories in the Canadian tech sector. And I think more remarkable than having witnessed the growth, I think what's also shouts out is the what has not changed. The leadership of Ali and Trevor's, the integrity, the authenticity, and frankly, the kind of the very complete focus and unwavering attention on the customer delight and customer and community, serving the customer and community, it has not changed. Jane, it hasn't. And some companies will actually have to trade some of that as they scale, but Jane has not. So that's why I think this is a conversation that's worth having. So I'd like to kick it off. I'd like to thank Trevor and Ali, first of all, for taking the time to come here. We're all from Vancouver, so it's a little bit further than some others. And I wanted to sort of start out with sort of a framing question, really. Take us back to the moment when Jane became more than just a side project. It is, in a relatively short period of time, it's gone from a bootstrapped startup to approaching 200 million in ARR. It's got 850 staff and growing. When did it stop becoming a side project and start becoming a real business? Ali, do you want to go first?
Well, I think we started Jane thinking it was just going to be a side hustle. So I had a healthcare practice, and Trevor had a marketing agency. We both ran small businesses ourselves. And Trevor sent me a proposal that was like 20 staff, and we were just going to be pulling dividends, and it was not really intended to be like the full-time thing. But I think pretty quickly that shifted. And so I guess the moment it shifted is when it could pay us. So we were both working for our other businesses, trying to making sure we could pay for our families. And then when we had enough revenue to pay us, then we just jumped full-time into Jane. So that was 2 years in.
Year and a half?
A year and a half in.
Yeah.
When you launched, Trevor, do you have a vision from a product standpoint of what Jane would be for those clinics? And how has that evolved over time?
Yeah, so the very first iteration of Jane was just a little kind of half-baked solution that was just for Ali's clinic.
Fully baked.
Yeah.
I paid for that.
Yeah. She did pay for it, yeah. It was a good little product. There's very little feedback, actually, no bugs. But it was incomplete. Ali still had to run another software in her clinic to handle all the billing and insurance. So when we thought, like, hey, we should sell this to other people, we're like, it really needs to do everything. There's not really, in a system of record, I guess a lot of you would know, like, you can't really have an MVP. A clinic's not going to buy it unless it runs their whole business. So that was the approach we went in with, and it needed to do everything. And in our case, that was handling everything to do with scheduling, everything to do with medical records, everything to do with insurance billing, cash pay, and then just all the administration that goes around all of that. So it was not an MVP mindset. It was like, let's build a very comprehensive solution right out of the gate.
Did we even say what we do? Do you know what Jane is? We didn't say that. No.
Alison, what does Jane do?
I'm like, no one even knows what we do. We're practice management software for healthcare, small healthcare businesses. It's like very small. Like we call them VSBs sometimes, like very small businesses. So that's solo up to, they could have a couple of locations. And it's, so think like chiro, massage, physio, counselors. It's sort of the three, we call them super buckets of different types of practitioners. So there's manual therapy, that's the acupuncture, physio, chiro. There's mental health or behavioral health in the US, that's counselors, psychology. And then we're also growing in the medical space. There's a lot more like concierge medical care, especially in the US. And then functional medicine, medical aesthetics. So anyone that needs medical charting, but it's not like a hospital or a large practice, you probably, hopefully all go to these people for your care and they help you out in life. Those are our people. That was a bonus question.
And I think the other point there is, I think what's unique is that it's multidisciplinary. I think there are very few businesses out there similar to James that are multidisciplinary in its approach. And I think that's one of the questions I had Trevor about. You come from a design background. You had a design agency. How much of Jane's success do you attribute to the fact that you simply built it and care more about product and customer delight than perhaps others that have come?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, designing for multidisciplinary was something that, it wasn't a question at the beginning because Ali's clinic was multidisciplinary. She had 12 different types of practitioners in her practice. And so on day one, the app had to work, had to be really flexible because all these, chiros and physios and massage therapists, and there was a counselor, there was midwives, there was a naturopathic doctor. They all practice differently. So the app had to be both flexible to accommodate all that, but then we were also kind of realizing along the way, at least in the design process, that kind of 90% of the workflow is actually the same. So we could build this app that was really well suited to all of these different practitioner types and then make it flexible in certain places so they all felt like it was perfect for them. And that's a fun design challenge. I think it was also easier to stand out 12 years ago, maybe from a design point of view, because software was pretty ugly 12 years ago, especially in healthcare. A lot of very enterprisey, legacy Windows on-prem products out there. So when we approached it as a web-based thing, and I'm an Apple fanboy, so it had some of that influence, it stood out. That's less of a competitive advantage today, though.
And I want to sort of shift the conversation away from the sort of design element to the, what I'm going to call, and the headline for this, and I'm going to call it, and then I'm going to ask Ali to comment on the headline before, but it's the counterintuitive playbook. And it's, Jane is growing in a way that many in this room, and I think many in our world would call unconventional. That you don't have, there's no sales teams, there's no SDRs, you have not taken, you've never taken primary capital. So all of these things are sort of a little unconventional. But before we go in and break those down, and I'd like to go into those, what those mean for Jane, I'd like, Ali, I'd like you to comment on the counterintuitive playbook, because I pretty much know that you have an opinion on that statement.
It's because you've heard me rant on this before. I do think it's funny that people call it counterintuitive, because the way that you grow a small business and the way that you treat your family income is very standard. Like, you do not spend more money than you make. How many of you have ever been part of a small business before? That's almost, some of you. Okay, good. Proud small business owners. You're a very important part of the economy. You do a lot for this world. Undervalued. But you can't run a small business that doesn't make money for very long, or you will fail. And so we both came from the small business world. It did not seem counterintuitive at all to us that you should not hire people if you cannot pay their salaries with your income. And so the revenue spend, this was a very natural way to grow a business for us at the beginning. And then as we learned about the tech world, which I think is the more counterintuitive world, honestly, which is spend a whole lot of money you don't have, that was more counterintuitive.
We didn't even know about that.
We didn't.
It wasn't an option in our minds.
Yeah, until later.
My dad always said to me, he's like, overhead is over your head, and don't spend if come. Those were the two mantras in my household. So that was part of our mindset.
So everyone's like, it's so odd how you ran your business. And I'm like, that's actually normal everywhere except for tech.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about the capital and the investment side of it. But I'm just, for the audience, how do you get to approaching $200 million of ARR without a sales team? How does that actually work? Everything is put through the customer support. So how did that evolve? Was it intentional? And how does it work in practice? Because I think that is something that possibly is quite rare across this room and indeed the sector.
We have inbound sales, so we have one customer team that does everything. So they do from inbound sales, onboarding, support. I didn't even know that these things were divided when we started. I'm like, it's so weird that you divide people's journeys into these moments in time, and then you ship your org chart all the time, where you have to hand your customer off into these various, again, seems kind of counterintuitive to me, actually. I'm like, I am a small business customer. I just want to speak to the same person the whole way through. And when you're a founder, you're doing that all yourself. And so I was like, well, I'll just hire someone else to do that all. And then we just continued to scale by adding people to do the full customer story as a role. And it just made more sense to me that you weren't overselling the customer at the beginning. You really understood the product. You understood how to onboard them properly, because you're going to be better at demoing if you're supporting the product as well. So we built it in a single team as we scaled. But mostly it's just because our customer growth has come through delight. So you build a really great product and you really support it well, and then people refer to each other. This is, of course, like an industry-specific thing for us, like small business healthcare. They talk to each other, and they like to share what's working well for them. So I think it's because we could. We were keeping up with growth. Our customers were referring to each other, so we just staffed and grew appropriately for that. I think if you're enterprise or mid-market, you have to have a sales team. Like, you can't just be like, well, the big companies are just going to come to us. I just don't think it works like that. But we were fortunate, I think, in our industry.
But how do you hire for that? How do you staff it and get the scale for that? Because obviously that requires a certain profile and an individual. And I'm so interested in how you scale to where Jane is now 850, based on ensuring that each one of the team members that are interacting with the customers have essentially a deep understanding of their requirements and what it is that they need. Does that pose a challenge, just scaling that way?
Yeah, I was talking to someone once and they said, oh, your team should be able to demo within like 2 weeks of joining. And I was like, what? I feel like the demo is the hardest thing to do well. Like, I feel like, how are you supposed to know everything? But it's because demos are just decks that people put up and just like run through a deck. But we're like, no, your demo, you should actually see your product. And I don't know, it just seemed like a weird, I thought the reverse was true. And so we hire people that can really care about the customer. Care is, I think, the highest thing on that team. And our head of customer is here, and I'm going to tell you, any change management takes like a lot of feelings conversations, because we have a very strong feeling customer team, which I love, because they really support the customer with like wholeheartedly. They are big fans. So we have unlimited phone support. There's no like quotas. They don't have to get off the, like, actually my favorite thing is when a customer is like, I was on the phone for an hour and they never made me feel stupid. And I'm like, I love this. I love that the customers are supported. So we scaled for that heart, which means that the business acumen side is something that you have to teach. But I actually think that's easier to teach than the heart for the customer. So they do 2 months of training before they even get on the phones. It's a very specific style of program. And then we also don't have like account reps because our ACV is too small for that. So the key for brand is brand consistency, which means every time someone calls us, they have to not want to speak to the last person they spoke to, because that's the only person who gave them good service. So every single customer has to provide the same level of service so that your brand is represented in every interaction, which is actually really, really hard to scale. It's like getting a good cappuccino is really difficult in a chain, because you have to scale, if you know about this, like consistency is really hard to scale. And so you have to just be really deeply committed to scaling quality and consistency, or it almost feels like it's not worth it, because your customers aren't going to get that brand experience. So when they call, they have to feel like they're talking to Jane, regardless of who answers the phone.
And I think a lot of this came about because it matches the type of customer we're selling to. These are very, very small businesses, and a lot of them are like solopreneurs. So they are healthcare practitioners that were trained to work on humans, and then they find themselves running a small business, and they don't know anything about that part. They feel imposter syndrome. They feel like everyone else is doing it better. And that's just kind of where Jane had that chance to just meet them at that place and be helpful and kind of provide them some expertise on the running a business part. We can't offer them any expertise on being a healthcare practitioner, but we can on how to run a business. And that was Ali's background. Ali was an administrator of healthcare clinics. So she brought all of this amazing knowledge and little tips and tricks that we'd share with people and just give them. I think that's where I'd love to say Jane, the product, was the reason Jane grew, but I think it was the support, honestly. Jane's reputation is so strong on how we care for the customer and the way our customers feel when they interact with our team. It's the magic.
I don't agree with that. I think it's both. I just don't think you can sell something that's not good, so you have to have both.
It's like the product's a pass-fail, but the support pushes it over the top.
So I'm going to, I don't agree with that either. Having seen it, there is a magic to it. Where I live and go to coffee shops, just as an aside, you'd actually see people on Jane, they're using it. And I will always generally go and say, oh my gosh, you're using Jane? And they'll go, yeah, I love Jane, it's fantastic. There's this kind of guttural response, which is wonderful to see. A question, was it an intentional a decision not to have a free trial?
Yeah, it was. So we just felt like it was such a big deal that a clinic would choose to switch their entire system over to a new product. And at first we were like, who is going to do this? Like, what are we thinking here? And then as part of that, we're just like, well, they're not going to really get it unless they see their own data in Jane. If they just look at a demo data set, it's you can kind of get a feel for it, but it's when they start using it that it clicks. And that takes some investment. They got to import their data and choose to start using it. So that's how we started. We just said, sign up 2 weeks before you want to go live. We're going to book a date that you're going to go live. And we're going to import your data overnight the night before. And the next morning, you stop using your old system. And that was kind of our approach from day one. Even though it is self-serve, you can just sign up and start using it. But for people that were switching, that was our program. And that created like a bit of a invested mindset in the user. So they were kind of committing before they really knew. And I think that's really helped. We question if we should do a free trial. It's still a question, but I think it's hard to see the value unless you start using it. And you can't use two systems at the same time. That would be an absolute disaster. You'd have double bookings, you'd have a messy financials. You just can't.
So switching to profitability, Jane has been profitable pretty much from day one. Is there, obviously in SaaS, I think a lot of people would say that's sort of countercultural. Was there a year where you debated that, where you thought, actually, you know what, let's not do that, let's burn and grow? What is generally your approach been to that profitability side of the business, running the business?
Well, up until 2021, I felt like we were actually being kind of penalized by the investment community for being profitable. They'd be like, oh, you're not trying hard enough to grow. What's all this cash here for? And then that really shifted post-2021 when profitability became sexy. So that was nice for us. But the profitable thing, like we've always just like, it's kind of accidental. We were like, we should spend every dollar trying to grow this thing, but not a dollar more than what we're making. And we try every year, but usually we couldn't hire fast enough, so we've just kind of ended up with a little bit of extra every year. But that was possible. We were growing on referrals. So all the money we were spending was on quality and taking care of our customers, and they were our growth engine. They still are. So it's just a different way to grow. Do you have any more to say about profitability?
No, I do want to mention, though, that like the metrics thing of profitability was not something that investors cared about. And then it suddenly was, and then everyone was doing layoffs and like trying to get to profitable super fast. And this is not the only time that that's happened where a metric that investors wanted became something different the next day. So I will say, if you're like starting a business, I call it the little black dress of metrics. You have to always be in style, which means you should have a profitable, growing, healthy customer. Literally every metric has to be good all the time, because tomorrow it could be a different one that matters. So if you actually just focus on what does a healthy, sustainable business actually look like, that's what's always in style. That's your little black dress. And so be confident in yourself if you want a profitable company. If whatever your metrics are don't totally align necessarily with exactly what the investor community is telling you, I would just say be confident in yourself and just have a strong, stable, long-term business that makes money. Businesses have to make money. That's their job. That's what business means.
And for the guys in the room, apparently a little black dress is always in style.
Wait, is there a man equivalent? Is whatever you're wearing right now, your jeans and suit jackets, is that what you guys wear? What's always in style for you? You all wear the same thing. Oh, look, see?
They're not jeans.
Oh, khakis.
So a couple of ways of conversation. By the way, I like the evolution to little black dress. It was I also, many years ago, there was an article in the Globe and Mail where you said it was a camel. It was like being a camel. So there's
That's
always
not
a
as
reserve.
Sexy. That's not quite
Little
so
black
good.
dress is cool.
What is
I think that's more on point. Is there? I think if you look back at it and in the benefit of hindsight, if somebody had given you a wad of cash in year 3, is there something you think, you know what? Actually, I would have built that then. I would have done something differently then.
No, we were racking our brains, and investors were approaching us in the kind of first 6 years to say what would you do if you had money? And we're just we don't know how to spend money to grow faster. We haven't built anything with a lever we could pull harder. It was if you build it, they will come, and if you do the right thing, they will love you sort of way of building a business, which you can't accelerate that with money. So we had no idea how to use investor money to grow faster, and honestly still don't really.
And I think having the constraints also breeds creativity. It also helps with prioritization. It helps with you have to do resource management, and you have to do quality control. There's a lot of things that constraints force upon a business that actually creates, I think, a lot of health. Performance management, you can't have bloat. So we've never done layoffs in 14 years because we never had room for bloat. And so you're always just sprinting towards the next thing. And generally you know what that is that you want to build, but I don't know that money actually makes you go any faster. Generally, it makes you, I think, a little bit, sometimes I say things that are controversial, I'm sorry. I think it can make you lazy, because I think you can just throw humans at problems. You don't have to really fix things that aren't going wrong. You don't always measure, the growth at all costs era, I think, made it hard to measure what was working and what wasn't. People just did everything, and then we're well, we have to keep doing everything because we don't know what of that is actually working to grow. So you spend all this money, and only 5 or 10% of it would actually create growth, but you wouldn't know which 5 or 10%. And so because we didn't do that, we didn't have any of that to pull back. And I think it's tricky. We're pretty insistent that the work we do has impact, and that we know what the impact is in order to scale it. So it can be hard, I think, to work in that environment. But I think it creates it does create a scalability, because everything you're doing has to work.
So on that subject, and given what you've already said, it won't come as much as a surprise, I think, to the room, that Jane has never taken any primary capital. I think.
Well, we did. We just didn't spend it. We took 10 million, but it's in the bank, and we never spent any of it. Right. Which seems like a waste now. I'm well, why do we do that?
Yet you have done several secondaries, and Joshua mentioned that the last one last year with a valuation of 1.8 billion. How do you think about investment and those transactions just in general? Understanding that it is not, it's not primary, and it's not to accelerate growth.
I mean, I guess the mindset was a bit about we should maybe take advantage of this ridiculous market we happen to be doing business in, because these people want to pay us a lot of money for this little thing we're building. So I think it was, it just felt, it was kind of opportunistic. And de-risking, I think, is part of the mindset. Like, you're pouring your life, and your whole team is, into this thing. We've always been, I hope, generous with our employee stock option plan. Like, everyone at the company owns some of the company and continues to earn no matter how long they've been there. We do re-up grants. And our teams had the opportunity to sell some whatever's vested whenever these secondary rounds happen. And like, that's the most incredible thing to watch. Like, our people like being able to buy houses who never thought they would ever be able to buy a house, especially in Vancouver. And like, the impact of that is wild. So the sort of the little bit of changing of hands of ownership of Jane along the way has been great. And we've also got to bring in really amazing partners, these investors, who have seen companies like ours before and have seen the next size. So they provide a ton of expertise and help. Yeah.
And we started on the investment path by accident because we had inactive founders that we needed to switch out ownership, and we couldn't afford to buy them out ourselves because we were already too big at the time. And so that's how we started. We weren't intentionally getting into the investor realm, and we were actually kind of assholes about it with the original investors. We were like, don't talk to us. We don't want you here. We don't want you involved in this. Which now, in retrospect, I'm like, I'm so sorry that we were like that. But that's okay. So we started on that, and then once you have investors involved, now you have a responsibility. I feel like when you're running a company, you have a responsibility to all your shareholders. That's part of, you have an operational responsibility, and then you have a responsibility to your shareholders. So we're now on the investment train. It's just how our story started. But bringing in, we have JMI and TCV and Arthur. Like, it has been actually phenomenal having a portfolio of companies, especially in the vertical SaaS space, that are similar to us. But especially similar but in different industries, the cross-pollination is incredible of the way that these different companies are helping small businesses scale. So I would say it's been like way more impactful to our business than we thought it was going to be. We heard so many horror stories about taking investment, but for us, it's actually been really lovely to have these partners. And they're very supportive in a way that we actually had to seek out non-horror stories when we were originally thinking about taking another investor on. And all we heard was like, they just come in and they rip out the founders and they put in their own operation teams. And we're like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. And so we were really intentional about interviewing different funds and making sure we were finding funds that were very excited about founder-led and that really aligned with the way we wanted to grow the business, and that weren't looking for like massive unicorn or bust, but that were okay with like a strong, stable, growing business. So alignment with your investors was important to us. But shout out JMI, your sponsors, you're here. I think TCV might be here too.
And Tidemark.
And Tidemark.
We're going to just take an interlude because there are a lot of fintech founders. There's a lot of heads of payments in the room. Given the audience, I want to take a couple of minutes. Jane has a tremendously successful payment business. And I'd like to talk a little bit about, just briefly, what was the genesis of it? What made you decide that it was something that you actually wanted to bring in-house, something that you felt it was a service that you needed to just not sort of staff out, but it was something that you wanted to own yourself? And talk a little bit about how successful it's been and whether or not you expected that level of success with it.
Yeah, so payments in Jane, the product, started because it made sense for Jane to handle payments. It wasn't like, it wasn't a business decision to go try to have a fintech thing. It was just like a natural, like, oh, well, we're doing everything else to do at the checkout. Wouldn't it also make sense for the Jane to actually process the payment so the user isn't typing in stuff manually? So that was the start. And then when we discovered that you could make a little bit of money if you do that right, I'm like, oh, that's a nice bonus. But we didn't maybe start very well. Jane's in person for most of what happens in Jane is in person, until more recently after COVID with all the telehealth. So it's a point of sale system. People need a terminal, and that really limited how we had to build a payments product, especially in Canada. There's very few options for partners to work with. So we had kind of a rocky start with picking a small partner, which they weren't the best on the quality. And then when Stripe finally released their terminal, we started using that and offering payments that way. But it's just a natural part of using Jane is to use Jane's payments system. And do you want to talk about rates? No.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, we started thinking about payments not as a business unit at all. It was just a feature set.
Yeah.
So the payments processor was just the rails that enabled those features. So I think a lot of people do it the other way. They're like, let's bolt payments into our business. But we were just trying to build features, and it needed something to make those features work. So it's like, how do you make this pay button work? Well, money has to move around in the background. And so I think for us, it's like, it was really just about the features and the product doing what it needed to do, and then how are you going to make that happen?
I think the most important thing we were looking for when we added payments was easy onboarding. Like, we didn't want our users to have to go through a 2-week merchant application process with a traditional ISO, and to be able to just have that instant sign up and have the verification kind of be a latent thing was ideal. Like, we just love that ease of entry, and our users love it too. And it scaled really easily. Like, it grew to 30% of revenue with maybe a team of 3 people kind of thinking about payments. And now it's a little more than that, I think, percent-wise.
The volume or the revenue?
The percent of revenue?
36%.
36, yeah.
Andrew's our interim head of payments, although we just hired Emily, who's here.
Mm-hmm. It's Emily's like third
First day today.
Yeah.
Third?
First day in person. Fourth day.
Fourth day.
Welcome, Emily.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I want to get to, I can't sit here talking to co-founders of one of the most durable vertical SaaS businesses without talking about AI. AI is what's on everyone's mind right now, and rightly it should be. So what does it all mean for Jane? And Trevor, I'm going to ask you, what does it mean for Jane, and what are you doing now different than you were doing last year, as an example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is fun. This is exciting. It kind of feels like getting pulled back to the beginning again, where we get to innovate with new tech, which has brought a lot of good energy into the business. I love this part. So our journey with AI so far is kind of, a year ago, we built like the market sort of indicated a few things that we just needed to do right away. So healthcare immediately adopted this idea of ambient AI, like the AI scribe type products for handling documentation. So that just became immediately obvious that, well, that's something Jane should just do, because we could do it better than any partner could do, because we can have that be more integrated into all of the things Jane does. So that was the first thing we built, and our users, it's fascinating. Like, our users are typically like really slow to adopt new technology. Like in healthcare, you could be like 5 years behind, and you are like cutting edge for healthcare.
Yeah, like they're just getting onto Instagram.
Yeah, they're mostly on Facebook. Let's put it that way. Yeah, but this was the exact opposite. Like, people just, there's something about, because AI is just so intuitive, it's so non-technical as from the user experience. Non-technical people adopt it quickly. So really quick product market fit there, which is very cool. But that's just a feature, right? And the thing I think we're all wondering about is like, well, what does AI-driven software really look like? Like, I don't know if anyone's figured that out yet. I don't think so. I think we're all trying to figure that out together. And I think the most important thing right now, being a 12-year-old company, is that we don't end up in the innovator's dilemma where we are still optimizing for our original business model and we miss the new one. So we're trying to think about this as, I think a lot of things about being a system of record for small business is actually a safe place to be, but we're still thinking about it like it's an existential threat. And like, what is the boldest way we could think about this and reinventing the product from an AI first perspective? And it's fun. So we've dedicated a good chunk of our R&D to this. We're building some really interesting things. But I think the main mindset is, Jane, everything we've built over the last decade, it's just a collection of tools, and our users have to learn how to use those tools. They have to know when to use them, and they have to get good at using them. And that's Jane. But now we get to help operate those tools on their behalf and actually provide the outcome of using those tools. And that's just a different way of thinking. And it's cool that this tech exists, that we can do that. Yeah.
Ali, what are your thoughts as somebody that used to run a multidisciplinary clinic and now serves tens of thousands of them? How has your vision evolved about how AI can change and enhance and improve that experience for the clinic?
Yeah, I think what I'm finding fascinating is, so we have obviously these small business clients and customers, and the next thing that's kind of coming up as a market desire, and it's like where the pull is from the market, is like, they're like, AI reception, AI reception. And what they mean when they say AI reception is like, they want the phone answering, but they didn't want to hire a human to do it before, because you could always get virtual human reception, but they weren't using it because it was too expensive. So I think in our small business customers' minds, this AI is like an opportunity now to expand what is offered to them through a software at a lower price than it would have been to have a human. And so small business, some of you put up your hands, margins are really small. I'm like, you don't open a restaurant, you don't open a clinic unless it's a passion, because their margins are tiny. And so anything that we can do to help provide more help to these healthcare practitioners is like my dream. I'm like, can we increase their margins? Can we make it easier for them to run their businesses? My mom is a physiotherapist, and I was raised 3 teenagers. She bought a clinic, even though she shouldn't have. She should have worked in a hospital. She is not a business owner. She does not love it. But she did it so she'd have more flexibility around raising kids. But she would work all day as a clinic, like as a practitioner, and then she would be doing payroll, and she'd be trying to run her whole practice around that in the evenings. And so I actually tell my team that sometimes. I'm like, you're talking to my mom. When my mom calls, you better be nice to her. Like, that is our customer. And so anything we can do here, and I think AI is such an exciting opportunity for small business, these owner-operator type providers, to have more support in their businesses at a price point that is more accessible. Let's see what happens with token usage. Okay, everyone, I know it's freaking expensive right now, but we're gonna get there. So this whole like shift into software is now, like, tech-enabled services. This used to be a thing, and I was like, how is that ever gonna happen? Like, the tech is not there. So there was all these businesses that were launching, and they were like, we're doing it with humans, but then we're gonna automate. And I'm like, you can't, like, I don't understand how you, like, what technology do you think you're gonna use to do that? Like, machine learning is not good enough. Rules-based is not good enough. But now this technology is now available where you can actually have outcomes provided by technology. And so this new world we're going into, where it's like, it's not tech-enabled service, it's like literally service is tech. It's like service as a software instead of software as a service, which, anyway, it's like, this is a whole new world. So I think for our customers and small business, I'm really, really excited about what we can build here. I think it's gonna change things dramatically.
Okay, thank you. So in the last few minutes, sort of the closing question, I'd like to ask the same question of both of you. If you were going to write just a paragraph as advice back to yourself 3 years into Jane, so not the first year when you're just sort of formulating, but 3 years in, when the company's at pace, you're doing, it's a real business, then what would that advice be? Ali, start with you, or start with Trevor, whichever.
Trust your instincts.
No, you do yours. you didn't like mine.
I like that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was like, this is what I'm going to say. He's like, that's the last piece of advice you need. And I was like, what? Okay.
Just because you already live it.
Well, I feel like I don't always. So I think we're, I guess, technically a first-time founder, but I think that our small businesses really do count. And I didn't count them, I think, actually, as much as I should have. Because when you're scaling in tech, there's a ton of opinions from people on how you should do things, and industry standard, and this is the playbook, and this is what's like valued in the investment world. And you're getting actually just like a lot of external input from people that don't necessarily know your business as well as you know your business. And so I think there's been a few times where I'm like, okay, I just gotta like, I guess that's how it's done, and it doesn't sometimes like totally make sense to me. And then I think those times have not really worked out. Like, so I think I would just say like, it's a, like you should, like running your tech company like a small business, like with the lessons you learned, is actually a good plan. And so there's something about trusting, but it's funny because my team's here and they're just like, great. You guys don't listen to anything I say. And I'm like, I try. It just has to make logical sense, and I think it's reasonable to expect the plan for your business to make logical sense to you.
I think when your business is growing really quickly, you're so focused on just building the business, and especially in those years when it's like doubling. And then a mentor type person said to me in those years, they're like, well, what are you doing to invest in yourself as a leader? Are you doubling your leadership skills so that you can keep up with this business that's doubling every year? And I thought that kind of stopped me in my tracks. It was really interesting advice. So I think it changed my mindset about learning more and spending more time at things like this. And yeah, that was good advice.
I think those two closing bits of advice are an excellent way to end this Q&A. So please, everyone, join me. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Trevor. Really appreciate it. Thank you.